Now Captain Marvel is about to take the lead and be at the forefront of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
This is probably one of the most aggressively marketed movies I've ever seen in my life. Marvel was really determined this is going to be a hit. This is going to be the biggest hit ever because this movie is about feminism. None of the other Marvel movies have left-wing message, but this one is going to be finally our social justice movie. And to their credit, they even screwed that up. There's all these talk about how this was going to be the most feminist movie ever. Brie Larson's like, oh, I have this responsibility to make this movie.
So incredibly meaningful to people. I don't think I fully understood the scope of it until they started talking about this character.
So is this a feminist movie? I'd say they made a half-hearted effort to it, but as this is a Marvel movie, they completely screwed it up in a mediocre way. There's a part of this movie where the Skrill or whatever they're called are digging through her mind, and we have flashbacks. And we have flashbacks to the sexist treatment she received, where she was driving a go-kart as a little girl, and one of the boys who's driving a go-kart said, "You're going too fast, you're going to crash." She's like, "No, I'm going to go as fast as I can because I'm a strong, empowered woman." And then she loses control of the go-kart because she's going too fast and crashes. And her father's like, "What the hell are you doing? You're too young to drive." She's like, "You know what? You're just trying to put me down because you're a man. Sure, I almost killed myself being grossly irresponsible." And then we have some other flashbacks to how horrible her life is. Like, she has to do this rope climbing challenge, and because she's a woman and she has much less upper body strength than a man, she can't do it. But it's not because of biological reality. It's because the other soldiers are laughing at her. And we find out how, like, women weren't allowed to fly fighter jets until, like, now. And that just shows how sexist they are. And she had to fly test planes because they let her do that. And then we get the only good line in this entire movie. It cuts to some, like, douchey Chad fighter pilot. He's like, "You'll never be able to fly fighter planes. It's called a cockpit for a reason." There's some douchey biker who comes up to her and he's like, "Hey, could I get a smile, baby?" And she steals his motorcycle and runs away. So I guess the motto here is, if a guy flirts with you, be a sociopath and steal from him. That's a good message for young girls. Wouldn't you agree, Brie?
The idea that we can have a symbol that represents strength and humility and compassion.
Anyways, it seems like this formula is working. The movie's made like $600 million in a week. It's probably going to make $1 billion, I guess, especially once the Chinese get involved because they have horrible taste in movies. And once they get into it, then God knows, they're going to be making an endless number of these. This franchise is just never going to die. The only reason I saw it is because it had already been a hit. I was going to wait till it was on DVD, but I figured I might as well just go see it. Now, before we get into the rest of the film, I just have to address this, which is what somebody pointed out. So as you know, I really liked Alita. I thought it was great. So critics gave it bad reviews, but audiences loved it. Whereas critics gave this great reviews and the audiences didn't like it. That's pretty low for an audience score because audiences are kind of like trained seals. So to be honest, the movie's not that bad. At least not that bad by Marvel standards. As you all know, I think the Marvel movies are god-awful. I just keep seeing them because I like to do reviews about them, and I'm kind of disinvested already, so in for a penny, in for a pound. So the big issues with the Marvel movies is it's a cinematic universe with very little world building. I think that's the first major issue I have with them. Like, in this film, we have the Kree, and we don't really learn anything about the Kree. They've been in a couple movies. They're obviously important to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but we're not really going to explain anything about them. It's like, do we really know anything about most things in this? I guess we know a little bit about Wakanda. That's probably the best developed thing. But like Xandar, the Reavers, Nova Corps, like, I don't even know what Hydra's ideology is. And Hydra's been in all kinds of movies. Like, is Hydra fascist? Are they neo-Nazis? Are they anti-Semitic? I have no idea. They're just kind of generic villains. So that's like number one. And that's kind of a big downfall of this movie. The second big issue is Marvel movies suck at having villains. Thanos is probably the best villain we've had so far. But let's just think about a couple Marvel movies, for instance. In Doctor Strange, we had Lashif, who wanted immortality or eternity or something like that. I guess Loki was a pretty good villain. In Thor 2, we had the Dark Elf guy, I guess. In Iron Man 2, we had Mickey Rourke, who wanted a bird, and that was his motivation, is they took his birds, so he wanted revenge. We had Ultron. What the hell was Ultron's motivation? None of these movies make any sense. None of them have, like, passable villains. So you don't have a villain, you don't really have background. So what does that really leave you? I mean, if you don't really have a world to take place in and you don't really have a antagonist, what's left? You have just kind of quirky interactions between characters, and that's the core of the movie. If you look at most of the Avengers or just Marvel movies in general, it's just banter between the various characters. That's all it is, because they have literally nothing else to offer the audience, and maybe some action scenes, most of which are very, very mediocre.
Leona says, why did she punch the old lady?
Why?
Yeah.
Great question.
So let's try to get into what passes for the plot in this movie, shall we?
And you're a Kree, a race of noble warriors.
Heroes. Noble warrior heroes.
Okay, so there's going to be massive spoilers here because this film is in a completely non-linear form of storytelling. And if I were to try to tell it in the way that it's told, this review would be way longer than it already is. So there's this forever war or something like that's been going on between the Kree Empire and the Skrill. The Skrill kind of look like Remans from Star Trek Nemesis. I don't know, and they're shapeshifters, and they can also take people's memories. They can take just their short-term memories, but they can also take their long-term memories using like this vivisection machine that looks at your memories. Kind of like the thing the Formatics used on Ender in Ender's Game. So this forever war is going on, and we're led for most of the movie to believe that the Kree are getting invaded by the Skrill, because the Kree are like QT blue people, kind of like the Chiss, and the Skrill are these goblins. We immediately believe that the Kree are the good guys. But actually the Kree are this expansionist, like xenophobic empire that's conquering the Skrill and conquering a bunch of other planets. You see, the Kree are led by the Supreme Intelligence, which I think is a computer. I don't know like how specific it was explained. It's like a bioorganic computer that's also a god, because everybody who looks at it sees it in a different way. The person they respect the most appears before them, before taking them into instrument. No, wait, that's a different movie. But yeah, so one of the Kree scientists, Mar-Vell, decides that she's going to leave the war, so she goes to Earth, and on Earth she invents the Lightspeed engine. And I was like, why is this? How can she develop this on Earth? Because she doesn't have access to like all the advanced laboratories and other stuff she would have on like a space world. And B, don't they already have light speed? I mean, they have jump drives. They can cross the universe in like seconds. Why do they also need this light speed engine? But apparently she develops this light speed engine, and for most of the movie we're led to believe that the Kree Empire centered here to develop this in secret so she could win the war in favor of the Kree. But the Kree are actually the bad guys in the movie, and she developed it so the Skrill could use the Lightspeed engine to go to the other side of the galaxy and get a homeworld that's away from the Kree. Why they can't just use one of the currently existing fold space time ships that instantly move across the galaxy, I don't know. That's never really explained. They just needed some reason to have a plot. So she partakes with Mar-Vell, Carol, who's the fighter pilot who is disadvantaged by males. She gets in the plane with Mar-Vell, and the airplane gets shot down by Kree, and then somehow she absorbs the power of the Thing, and the Thing gives her superpowers, and the Kree are like, we'll take her with us so we can figure out how the light speed drive works. And the guy who takes her is Jude Law, and she's dying, so he gives her a blood transfusion. Now, the thing I don't get is the Kree are kind of like these blue people, right? They have blue skin. They look kind of humanoid, but they're blue. And Jude Law is a full Kree, but he's just white. And I'm just like, what is up with that? Why does nobody comment on this? I mean, I guess like Carol has blue blood now, but she's still a human. Why does nobody comment on this? And I actually looked it up, and apparently there's like 2 species of Kree, and one of them's just white. It's like, that would be nice if that was explained, because that was something I was really wondering. We didn't have time for that. We had a time for another scene of Samuel L. Jackson like fawning over the kitten. That's what we had time for in this movie. We didn't have any time, though, to establish anything.
Aren't you the cutest little thing? Aren't you cute? And what's your name, huh?
Fury.
What's cute?
Yeah, so she gets the blood transfusion. She's a Kree now. She's stronger, even though she doesn't need superpowers, 'cause she already has superpowers. But I think it gives her an extended lifespan, which is kind of a wreck. And she should be like middle-aged because she appears in Infinity War, which is like 25 years later. I don't know. None of this makes any sense. So she's part of this Kree commando team, and they go to try to get this infiltrator who has information on how to defeat the Skrill. But it turns out that it's actually a trap, and she gets captured, and then they hack her brain using the vivisection machine, and she finds out that she's actually from Earth, despite the fact that she's obviously human, and this is a shock. So she crash lands on Earth, and she tries to call Jude Law, like kind of an ET phone home thing. And because this film takes place in the 1980s, or I guess the 1990s, she like hooks a Game Boy up to a phone booth. And that's the way she figures out to call home. And this is kind of where the movie, I don't know if any of you have ever seen Star Trek III: The Journey Home, but this really kind of reminds me of that. It kind of goes from being an action movie to being a fish out of water, like awkward comedy. So like Nick Fury's this young SHIELD agent. Well, I guess not young. He's like in his late 30s instead of like 60 as he is in the new movies. So he shows up and he's like, look, guys, aliens don't exist, even though I'm pretty sure they've established that aliens exist in previous ones. I mean, wasn't that kind of referenced in Captain America? Wasn't that referenced in some other movies? I'm pretty sure they knew that aliens and superhumans existed in the past, but for whatever reason, they don't know that. So this is kind of where this is where I'm not sure if how much of this was supposed to be comedy and how much of this is bad acting. Because it's kind of a running joke that she doesn't have a memory about anything on Earth, even though she knows how to use everything on Earth, like motorcycles and trains and telephones. And she knows how to use all this other stuff, but she doesn't have any memory, so she acts really awkward around people. And I can't really tell if that's just Brie Larson's acting or if it was deliberate, but it's kind of hilarious, like just how bad her interactions with people are, particularly with Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. So we have this long, boring thing where they go to some airfield and we find out that there's some government cover-up regarding the Lightspeed engine. And then the Skrill show up and they're like, look, the Kree are actually the bad guys. You got to believe us. And she's like, I have no reason to believe you, but I believe you for some reason. And then they find out that Marvel has a Kree cruiser in orbit. So they fly up to the cruiser and they find out that a bunch of Skrill have been living there. And this has never really been, I don't think it's ever explained how they got there, why they're there. It's like, no, they weren't trying to get the Lightspeed engine. The Lightspeed engine was just a front to get to this ship full of refugees. But why didn't they just tell her that it was to get to the refugees and save them? Like, why is this entire, subplot even needed? You know why it was? It's simply because of lazy writing and because they didn't want us to know that the Skrill are naughty till, this part in the story. So that happens, and then the Kree show up, and then the Kree are like, You got to come back with us, Carol. You belong with us. We made you stronger. And then they hook her into the Matrix, and she goes and talks to the Deus Ex Machina. And the Deus Ex Machina is like, you have to come back to us. You have to help us restore the Matrix. And she's like, I don't want to help you restore the Matrix because you're evil. And then she goes, I am the one. This whole time you've just been holding me back with your programming. So then she activates her superpowers and blows the Matrix up, even though she doesn't. And then she starts fighting the Kree warriors. And despite her like incredible powers, she still kind of gets her ass kicked, and she doesn't do. So then she like Grill managed to get away, but she gets ejected out. But she can survive in space because her Kree spacesuit has a thing on it that allows her to breathe in outer space. And then she goes down to the planet, and she fights the Kree, and she drives them off. And then the Skrill are like, we're gonna go now and save the other Skrill. We're not actually gonna go and use the light drive. And they use the light speed drive, and they keep it on Earth. And that's like the end of the movie. And she's like, okay, guys. Oh yeah, and Ronan the Accuser shows up, who is like the bad guy from Guardians of the Galaxy. So he shows up and he tries to blow up Earth, and then she stops him and he's like, we're going to come back and blow you up later. But he never does for some reason. I guess he had better things to do. Captain Marvel's like, hey guys, I just made Earth a giant target, and the Kree Empire's going to be back for revenge. But I'll see you guys later. I got to go finish the fight, like in Halo 2. So she leaves, and then the film's over. And because her call sign was Avenger, they named the Avenger Initiative after her. And Nick Fury decides he's going to make a team of heroes. A team of hero warrior meta-humans is basically what Nick Fury's goal is. So then, as always, we get the shitty Marvel post-credit scene where we see Captain America dialing her on the pager, because that's a big thing. There's a pager in it, guys. You remember pagers? I don't either. I don't know. Maybe this movie's just doing some boomer posting or something like that. And they're like, we're going to call her and she's going to come and save us with girl power. And I just kind of want to end this on a joke that a very good friend of mine came up with. So when I saw The Force Awakens, my big issue with it, well, I had a lot of issues with it other than the fact it just sucked, was how Rey beat Kylo Ren. Because Adam Driver is like 6'2.5", and he's a pretty bulky guy. And I'm like, I forget how tall. She's like short for a woman. And I'm like, Kylo Ren is using two-handed power cleaves, and she's somehow blocking them. And I'm like, just in terms of physical strength, he should overwhelm her. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. So his kind of joke is whenever I start complaining, he goes, girl power. I'm like, but it doesn't, girl power. I'm like, but how can she, girl power? You're not hearing me. Girl power. So Captain Marvel is going to show up, and she's probably going to beat Thanos, even though no one else can beat Thanos because of girl power. And because there's no female Avengers except for Black Widow, but she doesn't get a movie, which is probably a good thing because it would probably suck. And yeah, that's kind of that's the film. It wasn't like that bad by the standard of Marvel movies, because Marvel movies are god-awful, mediocre wastes of space and time and everything else. But I wouldn't see it. Don't see this movie. I wouldn't even see it when it comes out on DVD. It is wretched. It is wretched like all Marvel movies are wretched. It's boring, mediocre, phoned-in, bland garbage. I don't think this movie franchise is ever going to end. Remember, the joke is one day we're just going to have theaters that just show Marvel movies on loop. And we're almost there. We almost have enough that we can do it. And yeah, so Captain Marvel, not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but a